Hi there. The smell in here is a bit on the high side because I have just painted the inside of the hull. This is the last preparation before I can put the deck on the middle section. But let me show you what I have been up to until now. To strengthen the upper part of the hull sides, I plan on gluing in quarter rounds from pine wood. This will increase the bonding areas with the deck top and remove the need for glass fiber strips around the joint. Moreover, I do not need to make fillets using the hatch opening to access. The fastening plates for the side stays are made at the same time. I have cut pieces of 10 mm thick plywood, large enough to fit with the hardware I plan on using. I use thickened epoxy to glue the plywood in place. I put glue on the bonding sides and clamp the first layer in place and continue with the second layer. And then the third layer, making up a 30 mm thick support. It will be 34 mm thick with the deck in place, all supported by two walls, the hull side and the dividing bulkhead. With plenty of glue in the receiving hole, I put in a quarter round. As clamps do not work on the round edge, I have to use a screw to press the bending side towards the quarter round. Now I start on the second chain plate. Same procedure here. 3 layers of plywood and a quarter round. That is also glued to the bulkheads. On the other side of the hull I have also prepared. The quarter round on this side will need after filling, as the round shape of the hull leaves a gap along the strip. I put enough glue on the edge to get them in place and put clamps to hold the quarter round in place. After a night of curing, I can remove the clamps. For some catch-up glassing. The joints that are not glassed in need some strengthening. The bond with the bulkheads will carry some load during sailing. Thus, I put small pieces of glass strip just around the joint. The main purpose of this batch of epoxy is to glass in the support. The chain plate structure doesn't need glass for the strength, but I want watertight wood surfaces also on the inside. Glassed-in surfaces are much more reliable compared to surfaces that are only covered with epoxy or even just painted. Untreated surfaces will rot and cause problems. As glass do not bend well around corners, I glass on one side at a time. The quarter round also needs the same treatment along the whole length, as well as the underside of the chain plate support. I continue with the forward compartment. I also take care of some untreated surfaces from last episode. The inside of the forward hull will be hard to access when I have put the deck on the middle section. Thus I prepare the inside surface with some sanding. As it's hard to reach the far front already now, I have put a coarse sandpaper on a stick. It's not very effective, but I do not need to remove much material. Just smoothen out the area around the hull joints, so that no sharp edge remain. I use the opening to sand the front. After the sanding, I take care of the other side of the hull. I have some areas that are not covered in glass. But the main focus now is to glass in the quarter rounds. After flipping over the hull again, I put another layer of glass on the support. I add supports around the centerboard case. These supports will be used to hold the outer shell of the case. I put some pressure on the pieces to get a tight joint. And after curing overnight, I can glass in these details as well. I first plan to use a stainless steel plate to hold the shell. So I marked a slot to cut into the support. But the stainless steel strip is too flexible in this direction. Applying horizontal wouldn't work better, as it would be too narrow space to fit with the board and the shell. A pipe is strong in all directions, and for this application has the best form factor. Thus I wash off the slot marking and draw markings for drilling a hole instead. This should leave 2.5 cm for the board and enough for the shell. I drill through the hole 14 mm thick plywood material and try to fit the 10 mm wide stainless steel pipe. I need to expand the diameter a little with some more drilling and the rasp. Now it will fit better. The pipe is cut to a length of 3 times the hole depth. I need 4 pipe pieces. 2 in the back end of the centerboard shell and 2 in the front end of the centerboard shell. I file down the burrs on the pipes in one end before I glue the pieces in place in both ends. I put thickened epoxy on the inside as well and cover this end with glass. The epoxy glassed in end will block water from coming in, and the epoxy in the hole will secure the pipe position. I clean up the excess epoxy coming out from the hole. Here I will try something that I haven't done before. I mix up a regular batch of epoxy and add 2% of color paste. This paste can be mixed with epoxy up to 5% with the remaining properties. It's very sticky, so I should have used a tarred stick to transfer the correct amount. As I'm well under the maximum amount, I put both sticks in. This looks like white paint. I use this to paint the inside of the deck white. The mixture doesn't cover so well, but for this surface it doesn't matter. It's still possible to use as regular epoxy to glass in an area that isn't covered. And when the mixture is further thickened with cotton fibers, it can be used on vertical surfaces as well, to glass in a mist surface with glass. In preparation for the real paint, I wipe off dust with a sticky cloth. I have some polyurethane paint left over from an earlier project. It's not very easy to work with, but should be good enough for painting the inside. It's mixed 1 to 4 by volume. It's a good idea to wipe off the can to prevent the lid getting stuck. The paint should preferably be left to pre-polymerize. After the waiting time, I start the painting. I have taped the pencil on a stick to reach far into the hull. I start in the front and work back towards the opening. I'm not too worried about the finish far into the hull. The area will not be visible from the outside, and hardly from the hatch opening. I also paint the aft hull, although this could be painted later. After a night of curing, I put on a second layer in the center. I use the leftover to paint the areas that will be accessible later. Now I have done all preparations before deck closure. All that will be hard to do after the deck is on is completed. Next time I hope you join me as I glue on the deck.